Hello. This is my first DrupalCamp, so please be gentle. And because it's DrupalCamp Scotland, my home country, makes it even better for me. My name is Dan. I'm known online as Dan Champ. You'll find me on d.org and various other places. I've been a web industry bod since 1994. I realise now that in terms of University of Cambridge, that makes me prehistoric, which isn't the best feeling. I've always called myself a full stack developer. That means I'm equally uncomfortable on the front end and the back end. I started my company in 1994. We worked mostly in accessibility and local government, developing websites for clients. I've worked with Drupal since 2009. Until recent years, primarily we just used Drupal to implement sites for clients. It was we basically just used it as a product, leaning heavily on contrib and core modules. And in recent years, I've moved a bit further on. Since 1st of August, I'm a Drupal engineer at Rohallion. And I'm also, since 2020, an intermittent contributor to LocalGov Drupal. I'm also a smallholder and various other things, which is why there's a picture of me there, feeding a baby lamb, just for a bit of interest. One of the few photos I have of me away from a keyboard, unfortunately. So I'm going to talk about the LocalGov Drupal waste collection module, its origin, its development, and what I learned along the way. I don't claim to have mastery of a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to talk for about 30, 35 minutes. There'll be time, hopefully a few minutes for questions at the end. If I say anything so incorrect that it makes you wince, feel free to interrupt me, but otherwise I'm happy to take feedback at the end. It's also a somewhat technical talk, but I hope there's value for everyone in here. So I'll talk about the waste collection module we developed for Dumfries and Galloway Council, how that then transitioned into a LocalGov Drupal module. I'll very briefly talk about the current status of the module, what I learned, and hopefully we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So Dumfries and Galloway was a Rohallion client, is a Rohallion client. I was working as a contractor. We implemented their LocalGov Drupal site in 2023. They had, as part of that project, they had a requirement to simplify their waste collection schedule process internally. So they use an external waste collection, waste management application. They were having to take data from that platform, repurpose it for their website, and also manually create PDF calendars so that residents could download their own calendar. So there was a lot of manual work involved for them. So the base requirements for this module, we need to tap into their external waste collection API, web aspects. They used an internal GIS API, or they had it available rather. They wanted public holiday support, so that when collections are disrupted during public holidays, they could provide additional information to residents. They wanted to exclude commercial collections. Their web aspects platform covered both domestic and commercial. They didn't want to surface those commercial collections. They wanted an ICS or equivalent file to download so folk could get them on their phone and get reminders and alerts and so on. They also wanted the printable schedule to replace the PDF. Apparently a lot of people will go on the website, print these off, stick them on their fridge with a magnet or on a notice board. So this is what we ended up with. I'm not going to do a live demo. I'm just going to click through this very, very quickly. It's a very simple user journey and pretty much universal for this type of service. Enter your postcode. One thing to note here is there is an example postcode provided, just in case. This is just a standard Drupal form, a single text box and a button. Oops, wrong way. Search for the postcode. If there are results found, they will be listed. If there are no results found, you get a nice message helping you. Again, this is just a standard HTML select element. Select an address. Behind the scenes, this is keyed to a UPRN, a unique property reference number. You probably all know, but that's every address in the UK has a UPRN, a unique reference number. And we then pass that UPRN to the waste collection API, and it returns the collection schedule for that property. So this is really the bulk of the work around the front end. Designed by a designer called Dave Hampton, who we work with on a number of LocalGov Drupal sites. So we have the selected address with the opportunity to change it here as well. The next collection, in this case, multiple collections on the next date. The time when you need to put your bins out by, I don't know who goes out at 6:30 in the morning and puts their bins out. But anyway, this was a requirement. The collection calendar for 6 months. Dumfries and Galloway's waste collection API only supported 6 months of future dates for collections. So that is not a restriction of the system, that's just the way that their external API worked. Option to print, add to iCal, and then the actual calendar itself for each month, the dates, the type of waste that's being collected, the colour of the bin, and a symbol that has no meaning other than to differentiate it visually. On public holidays, when these collections are going to be disrupted, so here we've got Christmas and New Year, the module supports this presentation where there's clearly going to be a change to service. The authority can specify a URL that this points to, where they can curate some content about what happens, what's going to happen on those days, what happens to your bins at Christmas and New Year. And then the rest of the calendar and some nice photos of your bins. So, there's the print view as well. This probably took more time than anything else in this project. Cross-browser, print CSS should not be this hard now, but it's amazing, it's just broken. So yeah, anyway, I was quite proud of this because it did actually work in the end. So the outcome, we have a happy client. There's actually a YouTube video of Susan Knox from Dumfries and Galloway on the local Gov Drupal channel talking about this. In that video, she states that this section of the website accounts for between 10 and 12% of their visits, so it's a heavily visited section, and we haven't had to make any changes, so it's quite gratifying that the UX design that Dave Hampton did and the technical work is robust and has stood up to the test of that traffic. It saved them significant admin time, no more creating PDFs, no more manipulating data, and they have more flexible and accurate service information because it's now live. There's now live interrogation of the API, whereas previously they were taking a regular dump from their external API and putting it into their web system. So a quick technical overview of the module, focusing on the data provider interface class. So I made some reasonable decisions, obvious but reasonable decisions when building this module. The only configuration was for the API authentication. So this was very specific for Dumfries and Galloway. So all the stuff you saw, like the sample postcode, the time, the routes, they're all hard-coded. The templates use some local gov-based structural classes for the grid system. Other than that, I did follow the same BEM paradigm that local gov uses, so that was quite useful as well. There's no database content involved in this module at all in its form for Dumfries and Galloway. So very quickly, this is the interface. This is probably the only interesting part here is we've just got 3 methods that you just map to what we've just seen. Find addresses by postcode, takes a postcode string as an input, returns an array of addresses, keyed to UPRN. Get address from UPRN, we can pass a UPRN to the GIS system and get a nice formatted address back so that on the schedule we can show that nice address. And get collections, which is where the bulk of the business logic here lives. So a little more detail. Find addresses by postcode at Dumfries and Galloway. We've got an endpoint of their internal API. We pass it the postcode. It returns some nice JSON, and we iterate that and sort it. And we've got our list of properties. I'm going to skip get address from UPRN, but here's get collections. This is their external API method. Get round and bin info for UPRN for new adjusted dates. I don't know. The documentation was exciting for that API. I didn't know postcode could have so many different uses of case in the same API, but there you go. We pass it our web password for this service, UPRN, the date range that we want to support, and it sends us back some trade collections. It sends us back some content. We removed trade collections. Before the 2nd of December, we removed garden waste because they were testing a new service. That should probably have been removed by now. And then finally, we apply public holidays to the collections, and we return that array to the module. So it worked so well. At Rohallion, we were also working with the new Cumbrian authorities. Cumbria County Council was disaggregating into 2 unitary authorities, so aggregating 6 borough councils or district councils into 2 unitaries. So one of those was Cumberland, and these are the 3 predecessor authorities for Westmoreland and Furness. So we were working with these other authorities as well, and they had the same requirement. We need to get our bin collection schedules available to our residents. So Barrow was the first one we did. Barrow had an external API provider called Whitespace, a SOAP API. Never want to do that again. I've worked with SOAP a lot previously, and I don't know how you can ever enjoy it in PHP. The other 3 didn't have an external waste management system or application that had an API, so they were exporting data somehow. Some of them had Excel spreadsheets, so I wrote a CSV data provider so that they could at least get this data on the website and out to their citizens. So the CSV data provider was quite interesting. I'll cover it briefly later. So, have I skipped a step? Yes, sorry. So what we've done here is we've accumulated waste, basically. We've now got 5 copies of this module, 90% plus shared code. The only variations were around data provision, a little bit CSS probably, a little bit templating. So obviously, it would have been nice to do a single module at the very beginning, but exigencies of projects and time and pressure. But at this point, we realized we need a single module that supports multiple data providers. It's also a clear candidate for a local gov Drupal contributed module. We're doing the same thing for local authorities over and over again. It's kind of the lifeblood of local gov Drupal that we contribute this back and make it available for other authorities to use. So there was no funding issue. The original funders were on board. Dumfries and Galloway were happy for us to use their work, the work that we'd done for them. The other councils were happy for us to use the work that we'd done for them. So between my company at the time, Rohallion Group and Rohallion, we contributed time to get this transitioned into a local gov Drupal module. We have a very well-defined user journey. It's kind of universal. There's no controversy around that. So we knew it would meet almost all needs of all councils in that respect. The front-end variations can be handled by standard Drupal theming. All we need to accommodate is these different data providers, and we need to add some more configuration options. So in terms of data providers, this is so the Drupal Plugin API is the obvious solution, the obvious and ideal solution. We were going to define a new plugin type. Now this was new to me. I knew about Drupal plugins. I'd obviously been exposed to them, had written a few. Local gov Drupal's got block plugins and all sorts all over, but I'd never considered how or that you actually could write your own plugin type. So the plugin API, a plugin type, provides swappable functionality, and that's exactly what we need in this case. It's discoverable, configurable, extensible by anyone. You can write a plugin, and it will be discovered by Drupal. It doesn't touch the original code. It's used extensively in Drupal core and contributed modules. It's littered with examples. So if you're looking for something, and there's almost always prior art, and you can just recycle some of that code and learn from it. It also allows us to isolate provider-specific code. So in waste collection, for example, the Whitespace API is probably, I think, the most common API that's used, or the most common application that's used for waste collection in local government in the UK. So by producing a Whitespace module, a data provider module, we accommodate those local authorities, and they have to do very little except configure this module to get their waste collection online. So this is the technical bit. How do we do this? How do we define this new plugin type? So the first stage is defining a plugin manager in our module services.yaml. Give it a name, point it to the class, and give it a parent of the Drupal's default plugin manager. The plugin manager class extends Drupal's default plugin manager. The most important bits, the most important bits here are in the parent constructor, the plugin subdirectory. So this is the pattern that Drupal will use to discover plugins of this type. The plugin interface, this is the actual interface that we're contracting with plugins using, and then the annotation class. So the annotation similarly is related to discoverability and metadata. So our annotation, because the class is called data provider, our annotation for this plugin type will become @data provider, and I'll show you that shortly. And we only set to piece of metadata, the ID of the plugin, a unique string, and the human readable name of the plugin. The data provider interface is a composite interface, just combines standard Drupal plugin capabilities. The real work happens in our module's data provider base. So this extends Drupal's plugin base and implements the previous data provider interface that we just seen. And really, these are the methods in this class. 3 very familiar abstract methods at the top that we're asking plugins to implement: find addresses by postcode, get address from UPRN, and get collections. And the rest are Drupal plugin management methods. Some of you may be saying, well, you don't have to do all of that yourself. If only I had RTFM. Drush Generate Plugin Manager will do this for you. Having said that, I feel I have a much deeper understanding of the Drupal Plugin API, having handcrafted my own and worked through its many shortcomings. So that kind of, I wouldn't do it again. What it also surfaced was the fact that we can now write, or maybe should write, a Drush generator for our own plugin type. So if someone comes along and they want to write their own plugin for a new application, they can just, we can set them up with a generator that gives them the scaffolding required. And this all comes together in our modules controller. So very quickly, when you install the module, you need to set an active data provider. So this is the exciting bit down here. We grab the configuration for our module. Part of that is the active data provider, and we then set our class's data provider to an instance of that plugin. So installation, standard composer installation, enable the module, enable at least one data provider, and configure at minimum setting the active data provider. If you don't do this at the moment, you get a white screen of death. There will be a fix, but it's not really an issue. Because of the nature of this module, it's only ever going to be implemented by developers or by someone who knows what they're doing, and it's never going to reach production. So out of the box, we provide the CSV data provider, an example data provider, which is kind of a minimal provider, and the whitespace data provider. The web aspects data provider, the SOAP-based one is, so the whitespace is the SOAP one. The web aspects one is coming soon. So the settings we now have configurable. Most of the stuff that's at the front end is configurable. Our selected data provider, our sample postcode, the base path. So councils will often want to sit this in a particular location on their website, so this allows them to do that. They can customize page titles. I should point out that individual data providers will often have their own configuration options, which we support. Public holidays are supported. If public holidays are enabled, this uses the GovUK public holiday JSON service. Set a region and it pulls it down. This is the path or URL where in public holidays disruptions people will get sent to for information about event collections. We have a list of ignored holidays. This needs improved, so that it's probably a toggle between include these or exclude these, because the GovUK list is quite comprehensive, so we do end up with quite a long ignored holidays list. Options for the ICS file, you can change the content of that now and the nature of the alerts that people get, and the bin collection time for the front end. So the example data provider, just very, very quickly to illustrate this. There's our annotation at data provider, which allows for discoverability. There's our example data provider ID and the human readable name. The example data provider just returns and find addresses by postcode just returns a static array of addresses in Scarfuck, keyed by UPRN. Get address from UPRN returns a single field for all cases, a single address for all cases. And get collections returns an array of collection data in the right format. So the collection data can contain information about a weekly collection, and then for each collection date, it can include the date, the type of waste, and the colour of the bin. There is now also support for collection time as well. So the CSV data provider, when we originally did this for Cumberland, it was just an all-in, all-out. So they would basically run this CSV import, uses the batch API. We would empty the database and just load it with anything that was imported. Now they had a few 100,000 addresses, and this was not reliable. It was reliable from the Drupal end, but there's things like CDN timeouts, and they were having issues with that. So this has now been extended to support an import mode for properties. So if they're running, they can just run a delta. They can just run updates when they need to. A couple of other bits that I wanted to mention. We had one authority, this was Cumberland as well, because they had 3 predecessor authorities and they were still running their waste collection on those 3 predecessor authority basis. They needed to vary the collection time. They needed to vary the collection time depending on where people lived. So we have this cascading configuration now where we set a sensible default in code. If it's set in config, we use that instead, and if it comes in via the data provider's data, we use that instead. So we can now allow them to override collection time on a per property basis. One of the other things that came out of this as I was working through this, the address pattern, the pattern of searching for a postcode, selecting an address, using that address for something is so common in local government. Most of the services are property-based, that really it's probably a candidate sooner rather than later to spin out that address stuff into a local gov gazetteer module that handles or provides the address lookup functionality, and the waste collection module will just use that service. So it's currently in alpha. I think we're at alpha 8. There are some issues outstanding. Needs better test coverage, but I'm hoping that we will get a 1.x release out by the year end. It's in production. It's being used in production. It's stable. It's working well. I've been waylaid working on the next release, the local gov elections module, which is why this has been neglected for a couple of months. So just to summarize, what I learned along the way. Build with contrib in mind. I made some sensible decisions. I can't remember in retrospect if I knew that this was always going to be a contrib module, but I called it local gov waste collection at Dumfries and Galloway, so I guess I must have done. I don't mean always build with contrib in mind, but certainly in spaces like local gov Drupal, when you're working on something for a local authority, if there's a good chance it's going to be a contrib module, it's going to work for other authorities, it's worth trying to do that little bit of extra work to make it a much more seamless, a much more smooth process to transition to a contrib module. Don't use bin colours as keys. I had assumed that, like my authority, that bin colours would be unique within an authority, but no. A friend contacted me and said, we've got 2 black bins, one for general waste, and one for food. I'd love to know how that decision was made. I've got a cheap job lot of food bins, but they're black. Oh, that's fine. We'll just go ahead and do that. Anyway, sorting addresses in MySQL is messy. In the CSV module, obviously we store the addresses as strings, and stopping MySQL getting 1, 11, 12, 13, and so on is tricky. Drupal documentation exists, who knew? And I think going back after, in fact in preparation for this talk, going back and reading the documentation, it was all there. I don't know. An old dog can learn new tricks, even in my advanced years. I've come out of this module development a much more knowledgeable developer, and probably a better developer, I think. Time will tell. I think the key thing that I learned here was I got a renewed appreciation for Drupal. As I said at the beginning, I was primarily using Drupal as a product for clients where we would just implement it as a CMS. That was fine. But having seen and experienced what the platform offers, I've got a renewed appreciation for its capabilities as a platform, and by extension, a renewed appreciation for the contributions that probably many of you have made. I'm just standing on the shoulders of giants here. I've made nothing new here. This is just look, mummy, look what I found. And I was a web manager at a local authority in the late 90s, early 2000s. We had an annual budget of £5,000, and I had to write a CMS, and I would have killed for something like local gov Drupal built on something like Drupal. So I really do think, for me personally, it's kind of opened my eyes a little bit. So thank you for your attention. You're as old as me. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them, or feedback, which you can give to me in private.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. We have about 10 minutes or so for questions. So
yeah, well, a little bit over 10 minutes.
Yeah, but I think I saw a couple of hands from there.
Okay. I promise.
Here on the right side. Yeah. Let's start with.
We'll start with. We'll play it safe.
Yes.
Thank you for your talk. First of all, I think you should be knighted for implementing SOAP. That would be something I would just say no to. Sorry, I'm not English, so there was one thing in the UX that I was a little bit confused, because it seems to be a necessary step after you choose your postcode, that you then, in your slide, you had like 6 King's Cross and 7 King's Cross and 8 King's Cross. Are there really different pickup schedules for my next door neighbor?
Yes. So the reason for this is in the UK, postcode units. So this is a postcode unit. The full postcode is called a postcode unit. Postcode units can straddle local authority areas in the UK. So 12 King Street, Castle Douglas, no, this isn't true here, but it is true in very specific cases. 12 King Street, Castle Douglas could be in a different local authority to 15 King Street, Castle Douglas. I know this from having worked as a web manager where this was an issue at a local authority. So yes, it is a necessary step. I guess we could actually, we could know that a postcode is entirely encompassed within one local authority area, and so we could skip this step. However, I think also when they print this schedule, people like to see their address. They like to know that it's the address.
Okay, it was just,
Yeah. No, it's a good question.
Okay. Next.
Yep.
Okay, let's make the trip up there.
Hi. I've known about LocalGov Drupal. I've never used it, and I was wondering if the UX design language is from there or is specific to the module. And follow up is like, it's very close to the design language of like Gov UK in general, right? And I was just wondering if that's
Okay, so
just by chance.
I mean,
Probably not.
Tony may be able to talk more about it, but certainly oops, I didn't want to do that. This is built within, this is using the local gov-based theme.
Okay.
So the only styling that comes from the module here actually is, is this.
Okay.
So, but yes, and GDS was used as a source throughout the building of local gov Drupal. It's kind of one of the founding principles was that we would use the expertise and the research might of GDS to inform the UX.
Cool.
So most of the components in local gov Drupal do mirror the best practice from GDS.
Perfect. No laptops? No.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Tony.
Tony, I'm a developer with Local Gov Drupal. Thank you for your brilliant work, first of all. And for Hilmar, I live at number 15, but number 14 is miles away from my house, just so you know. My question was about the sharing of the address lookup tool, and you touched on elections as well.
Yeah.
And there might be other services. What do you think the next use cases would be for councils for that kind of lookup and extracting parts of this into a more generic module?
When I was a web manager at a local authority, we built basically my home or my services page where you could identify your address, and it would show you your councillor or councillors, your local MP, your local MSP, link to your bin collection, because these are all kept by UPRN, a link to your bin collection, a link to consultations in your area, a link to planning applications that are in your area. So I would start from that perspective, is we can give residents, just using a UPRN, we can just give them a landing page that shows all the information for that property. And so then it doesn't really matter where you start. Elections is a good one. I mean, I've been working on elections. I'm not going back and doing more. But things like elected representatives, I know a lot of councils farm that out to third-party services, but I can see a use case for that coming into local gov Drupal.
Yeah.
So
Sounds like a really valuable thing to be thinking about. And
I wish I'd done it as part of this. I think there's a minor issue. So like the SOAP API for Whitespace provides both address and waste collection, but their address stuff is rubbish and it's awful. But the council didn't have an alternative.
And we also have Irish councils where the data and the systems and the APIs might differ, to think about that as well.
Yeah, and I think maybe the public holidays using Gov UK may not suit Irish authorities too well, should we say?
Yeah.
So that needs to be to be configured somehow differently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions there on the left? Joey will.
Ready?
Hello. I don't play sports. I'm not used to catching things. I work at a local authority and have been stressing about bin calendars all week, so I was looking forward to not thinking about it today.
Sorry.
But thankfully, I found it really interesting. I really appreciate it. It was really good.
Thank you.
And I was just wondering, since you've worked with multiple councils on this, if you had any insight, because I find that on the UX team, we sometimes want different things than our waste team want. So that's actually been one of the biggest challenges, is making sure it's user-friendly while still meeting their operational requirements. So I'd just be curious if you had any insights into how that's been at the different councils.
I've been fortunate in this project is that I'm removed from that. I'm obviously one step removed from it. It's a constant. It was always a constant challenge when I worked at local authority, but I think you just need to point to best practice, point to other authorities. The video by Susan Knox, I'd recommend watching that if you haven't, because she goes through Dumfries and Galloway's internal processes as well. And so I think you need to sell it. I mean, really what it comes down to is they give them their domain expertise and listen. They may have some insight that you don't, but in terms of your domain expertise, you need to be assertive. I know it's hard. I've worked in IT. I've worked in web services that are part of IT or part of communications, and it's always easier from the comms when you're working in comms. When you're in IT, it's a bit too system focused. So best of luck.
Makes sense. Thank you.
I have a question, and it's not just because this cube is exciting to hold. So first of all, actually, I would say the plugin API is one of Drupal's greatest unknown. Like, not enough people know about it, and it's fantastic and amazing, and I love it. But that aside, I think it's interesting how you've been able to kind of take the different bits and sort of like abstract them out. And so, yeah, I just wonder if you have, if you see in the future, like if when more kind of, do you see a situation where councils could start thinking, oh, I need a plugin for my specific feed of data, but we're trying to say, I suppose the communication aspect of the community around local gov Drupal and say, okay, there is a plugin for this, there is a plugin for that, but how do they know that that one is going to work for, like, how do you communicate, like, okay, you have this feed, actually that plugin does the thing you want? I guess it's more of an open question of like that communication piece around making sure there's not too much duplication, because that's, as we see a lot in open source, you go, someone's made a plugin or module for that, and then someone else writes another one, and suddenly you've got 3 different ones that all do the same thing in the community,
It's a good question. In one of the slides there, I had the active plugin as North Tyneside. So North Tyneside recently launched their local gov Drupal site. They contacted me for help with the module because they were trying to use the CSV plugin, and they weren't aware that they could just write their own plugin. They actually have an internal API that provides address and waste collection. So I think we need to do a better job at marketing it and making it discoverable. It's all in the README, but
yeah,
who reads the README? But I agree. I mean, I see use cases for the plugin API everywhere I go now.
Yeah. Another question.
I have one for quick more. Yeah, here.
Where am I going next?
Last one on the second row.
Yeah, thanks for that. That was really interesting. Question about the printable calendars. What challenges did you have around that? And just one note that I'm not sure if you're aware that the annotations, the syntax is being deprecated in favor of PHP attributes. Which there's a contribution opportunity for somebody.
Yeah. I should have said there's issues if anyone's interested, but yes. Font sizing, print sizing. I think between Chrome and Firefox and Safari, it's just I would look at the CSS and see where there's. I thought we'd got over this. I thought, having worked, as I say, since '94 in the days of Netscape Navigator and Mosaic and IE4 and IE3 and so on, I thought we'd got over that. But no, there are still a lot of challenges around. CSS for print, I don't know if there must be progress. Someone must be looking at this somewhere. I guess we just need to wait. I think from memory, it was font sizing and just getting mysterious page breaks. So this comfortably sits on the page, but it kept breaking at the next row of months, for example, for no good reason. There was plenty of room there. So, it's hard to diagnose sometimes with print. So if you can see any improvements in there, feel free. Would welcome the input.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Thanks again.
Thank you.